Welcome to Charity Therapy, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of the nonprofit sector and answer your burning questions. I'm your host, Jess Birkin, owner of Birkin Law Office, and I'm excited you're here. Imagine hanging out with me and my super smart, funny nonprofit expert pals. You get to ask them anything about your nitty-gritty nonprofit life and get their wisdom for free. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just strapping on your nonprofit boots, we're here to share stories and remind you you're not alone on this journey. So get ready to join the conversation and bring me the tough questions. I ain't scared. Ready to rock? Let's dive in. Okay, well, let's do this. Hello, welcome to this episode of Charity Therapy. I'm Jess Birkin, and I'm here with Megan Heitkamp, per usual.
Hello, I'm here. We're here. We've made it.
Okay, you know you're old when the theme song from Laverne and Shirley is what pops into my head. We're gonna do it. Da, 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 da.
Is it really a charity therapy episode without Jess singing on the podcast? I am not of that generation. I don't know that. Sorry.
I understand.
I apologize.
There
are some random things I do know. That one I don't.
You are an old woman inside. We've already established this. Grandma Megan.
I just don't have the Laverne and Shirley side of things.
You just didn't watch enough TV from the 80s. That's all.
It's true. It's very true.
All right. What are we doing? We're not actually singing a Laverne and Shirley theme song today.
I mean, we are clearly, but we're also doing other things. So I have a listener question for you today, Jess. Really surprisingly, because that is the structure of this podcast. We will try to stick to it. So, Jess, you know.
Yes.
At Birkin Law, we've onboarded lots of new
Lord.
people. And it takes time to get everybody up to speed able to do things.
So much time.
Totally. And I think everyone is so focused on onboarding new employees because, of course, they have roles to fill and it's important and crucial to the function of the nonprofit or the law firm or whatever it is. But in nonprofits, I'm not sure that people give as much time and attention to new board members as they do new employees. But board members do need to get up to speed so that they can make good decisions and fulfill their fiduciary duties to the nonprofit too. They can't just be dropped into the middle and expected to know what to do.
I feel like that is a hallmark of nonprofit life is people just drop you into the deep end and expect you to know what to do. So
just figure it out. Yep. So anyways, we have a listener question all about this. But before we dive in, I do want to get your thoughts about getting new people on the board. How does that normally look? How should it look when you recruit a new board member?
Well, I mean, I hate to give you the lawyer, it depends, but it kind of depends.
Yep.
So, and I think you're totally right. This is not a thing that people think about for board members. And I think some of that is probably because we don't think about it when you're starting the nonprofit. You just have your board.
Yep.
And so why would you train these people? There's no process in the beginning. Yep. So then there's no process when you add your first new board member. And then there's probably no process when you add your second new board. And so pretty soon there's no process around it.
Yep.
And I think the same can kind of be said of recruiting. I think a lot of especially smaller nonprofits, they don't really have a recruiting process, is my guess.
Yeah. We're flying by the seat of our pants and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a membership organization, obviously they will be recruiting from their pool of members. And so they have a little bit of a more baked in process. They're probably going to have an annual meeting. There's going to be an opportunity to run for election. Those organizations have a little bit more clear. Everybody else, that's a garden variety C3 that just has to find a board. Obviously, if you're running a family foundation, guess who's on the board? The family members, right? But your dog rescue, your church, your whoever, well, church is probably you elect from the congregation. And so that's another member organization. But all of those other C3s out there, they're just sort of willy-nilly.
You want to be a board member? You want to be a board member?
Honestly, I think that's the way it actually goes a lot of
Yeah,
the time.
totally. We just need a body and a seat.
We need a warm body in a seat, and that's why I have a job.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do people recruit? I think probably not very mindfully. I love to see a nonprofit that doesn't have an overly bureaucratic process, but like thinks thoughtfully. Maybe they do a SWOT analysis, like what are our strengths on the board, weaknesses on the board, challenges, opportunities, and kind of figure out like what's missing, like what would we benefit from. I like to see board recruitment take into account, are we like representing the different aspects of the community that we serve? Like if we serve predominantly like urban youth of color, do we have any people of color on this board?
Hmm.
Do we have parents of, these kids or whatever?
Yep.
I like to see recruiting that's not just like, well, I know this person, therefore they should be on our board, because
Right.
it's very hard to get a diversity of anything if we only grab people we know. I also like to see using volunteer engagement or committee work or advisory board work as a sort of like vetting ground for future board members, because people can like act like they're great and then you put them on the board and they turn out to be a nightmare. Again, why I have a job. So those are kind of the things that I like to see happening. How that happens for each individual organization, it's very dependent on what they do and who they are and where they are and all of that. But those are some of the hallmarks that I would like to see clients doing. Frequently don't see clients doing, but
Yeah.
life goals. Hashtag life goals.
Nonprofit goals. Yep, totally. Okay, so you will be pleasantly surprised to see that our question asker today is at least asking this question about how do we do this? How do we get them up to speed? So let's
Right.
just
I'm
jump right
excited.
in. I am the secretary on the board for a sports organization in the US. We started up about 2 years ago and we are finally growing and expanding. We officially have our first new board member that wasn't a part of the original team, and we'll be recruiting more board members over the next few months. How do we get these new people up to speed? They're brand new to our organization and don't know anything about how we operate. My treasurer suggested we have some sort of a welcome packet. We work with a specific sport, so we want to make sure everyone understands the rules and everything about that, and to give our contact info and meeting dates or something like that. Is there a good practice here?
Okay. First of all, I love this person.
Right?
You are like, could you come over here and be our client? Because you have such good instincts. Like, this is amazing. You're doing a
Amazing.
great job. Just the fact that you are like thinking this through
Hmm.
and like on board member one for the new people, right? I love that. That is so
Yep.
great. So props to you. Yes, I think a welcome packet is good. I think a good primer on how does this sport work? What is the intercollegiate blah 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 leagues? What are all the rules? What is the vibe? All of those things are needed. Also, contact info is great. I like when boards pair you with like a mentor, like your board buddy. So on the first, for a lot of people who are not direct communicators and may feel embarrassed, it can be difficult for them to sort of like raise their hand and say, I don't know what's going on here, or I'm not sure how this works. So pairing someone with an existing board member as their board buddy, I kind of hate it. Sounds like adult, like we're treating everyone like preschoolers.
Yep.
You're like at summer camp and you need to raise your hands with your swim buddy when the
Yep.
lifeguard blows the whistle, right? But it does give that person someone to contact besides the executive director, if there is one who's
Yep.
busy, with their questions about like, how does this work? How do we do this? I
Yep.
like that. Also, board training about what the hell does it mean to be a board member? And no, I don't think you should just hand them a 26-page pamphlet from the Attorney General's office or the IRS or the Council of Nonprofits, because most people aren't going to read it. Most of that stuff isn't written for human consumption anyway. It's going to be confusing. They're going to have questions. And many people do not learn by reading. We were talking about this earlier today. Some people need auditory, visual. People learn by asking questions. So, like an actual training that they can interact with is ideal. There are lots of ways to do that. There's online training. There are lots of consultants who do board training. I do board training. But training is good not only for new board members, but also for existing board members because it's nice to have everybody on the same page, remembering what their fiduciary duties are, what their legal obligations are, all of those things. So those are good practices. I'm trying to think what else I would want to see.
I was just talking with a new client who is became a new member of the board and was trying to get up to speed, and she was telling me all the things that she did, and I was like, I think this is a really perfect example of like she was not given a handy little welcome packet. She requested a lot of these things,
Good for
but
her.
she was like, "Hey, can I have the meeting minutes for the past year? Like, I just want to kind of
Yes.
see what's been going on, what kind of decisions are being made, what the like, discussions have been like." And that, we have a great episode about meeting minutes where it doesn't include everything under the sun, but it does give you some good broad strokes of like, hey, it looks like a year ago we were having some like financial problems, but like that has kind of evened itself out and we're really focusing on this program. Like just some context is important.
Yeah. Just being able to show up to the next board meeting feeling relatively informed and
Yes.
not being like, I abstain because I don't know what's going on. No,
Hmm.
not acceptable. You need to make sure this person is ready to jump in as soon as they have to show up to a meeting. They should be able to know about the old business on the agenda
Yep.
and be prepared to vote on those things.
Yep.
That's a training issue, right? Absolutely.
And another thing that she was talking about, and this is the kind of person who was for sure like an information monger. Like she wanted everything, and like not every person will want all of these things. But she requested their articles and their bylaws and also previous financials. And some of that is not even to like pour over every word or figure on those things, but just like, do we have these things? Like, what do I need to know about like the way that we operate? And not that you need to like study up on every important policy or something before you even start in the first board meeting, but it is useful to communicate to new board members of like, hey, here are some of the big like structural things. You don't need to memorize it, but if you ever need access to it, here's how to get it. And
Okay, I
all of that
love
kind of stuff.
that you're bringing this up because that is on my list of like before you join a board,
Yep.
you best know what
Yep.
those things are. So it's
Totally.
like that wasn't even on my radar because in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's the due diligence. Like before you even are dumb enough to say yes to this, look at their 990s. Do they have
Yep.
articles and bylaws? Do they have directors and officers insurance? Those are all things that like I want people to be asking before they join a board. But absolutely, if that wasn't part of your process, now is the time to get
Yep.
those things. And kind of like the situation you're relaying brings up the point that like welcome packet is great, but do you have a cloud file storage place
Hmm.
that has everything a board member would need access to?
Yep.
Or is it all in a messy, probably a Google Drive where you can't find anything
Or
because
even
Google
worse, a
Drive is
filing
crap?
cabinet in the
Oh, God.
president's like
Hey, yes. If it's on
garage.
paper, it's time to scan it in,
Yeah.
folks. Time to scan
Yep.
it in because the board needs to be able to see the articles and bylaws, all of our organizational policies, descriptions of our programs is good. The website should theoretically have that information if we have a website. Financial reports, old audit reports. Yes, you can pull 990s from the internet, but like just make it easy for your board to be able to know like this is what we do here. This is how we do it. These are our policies because even if you are an information gatherer and you read it all before your first board meeting, I can't remember what happened yesterday. Like you
Totally.
need to be able to go back and find it again. And it can't just be in a folder that I gave you once and you ended up recycling it accidentally a week later.
Well, and I think that all of this kind of speaks to the bigger thing that happens when you are pulling people into an established team is that this is your time to, really set standards about how we operate, what our culture is like, all of that kind of stuff. And we talk about transparency and accountability externally, like to your constituents, but this is your opportunity to say, like, hey, I want this new board member to be a full participating member of this board. Bring in all of your new ideas. We're going to give you all the tools you need to do your job. And we're not going to be like hiding information from you that's maybe unsavory. We're not going to be like, there's the old boys club of the original founding board members, and these new people are just sort of like rubber stamping everything you say. Like, this is really your opportunity to communicate that from the very beginning.
Okay, I think this could be like a whole other episode, but I think
So
what you're
true.
hitting on though is so important, especially for this listener, because it's their first new board member.
Mm-hmm.
You said something about culture and who we are, and they may not realize, but they already have an organizational culture. So like
Absolutely.
right now is the best time to sit down and say, what are our core values?
Mm-hmm.
Who are we? What
Yep.
makes us us? And I know like for you and me, that has been like transformative at the firm as we've like grown and hired people and brought people into the team. It's like something's not right. It's usually because it doesn't mesh with our core values. Doing like a real core values exercise right now as you are starting to add people into the mix, because it's easy when you're just like chugging along and like you're like, yeah, we've been doing this all along. And now you're going to bring people in, and there can be mismatches where something is irritating and you don't know why it's irritating. But if you were to do your core values for the organization, it would be crystal clear immediately, like, oh, that's because blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
That violates our value of X, right? So I think that's like, I don't want to go too deep on that. That's like a whole other topic. But this is like a really good part of bringing in a new board member and teaching them what is our organizational culture and being aware of who we are, what makes us us. Why are we different from, let's say it's a soccer group. Why are we different from like FIFA or something? I don't know. That's a terrible example. But you know what I'm saying? Because all of these organizations have a vibe, and sports organizations in particular can get very weird and competitive, and depending on what kind they are, youth athletic leagues in particular, very. But deciding who you are and then helping board members understand what it means to be part of this culture, I think is also a big, good, best practice that I would love to see more organizations do.
Absolutely.
All right. That was a lot of things. I feel like we have a whole bunch of takeaways. What are they?
Let's dive right in. So, first, I will say you want to be mindful of how and who you are recruiting to be on your board. It can be tempting to say whoever's around is great and convenient, but when you are building a board, it's important to consider who's already on the board, what sorts of areas you are missing and could really add to the makeup of the board. Just whatever that means to the individual organization, you want to be strategic and mindful of that process. Also, you want to have a process in place to recruit and onboard new board members. This is something that a lot of people just sort of like make up as they go along, which I totally understand, but it'll make your life and future board members' lives easier if you have a step by step process in place about how you do this at the organization. Also, a great idea to have some like documented welcome packets, maybe a program with a board buddy, something like that to say, this is your onboarding phase. These are the things you need to know so that you can be a fully educated and ready to go board member as soon as possible. So, really thinking about the kinds of things that they need, from things that are really specific to your mission, like rules of a sport league, balls, things. My brain broke a little bit there. But also, like some of the more nonprofit inside baseball stuff of like, what does it mean to be a board member? What are your obligations? What sorts of things are you required to be able to know about? What is the purpose of the mission that we are like going towards? All that kind of great stuff. And then last but not least, I would say that while you are busy creating a really great onboarding experience for the individual board members that you're trying to recruit and onboard, also be mindful of the fact that you are creating the culture of the organization as you do this. And you can take this opportunity not only to allow people to learn and buy into the culture, but also to like set standards about how you would like things to operate in the future.
Well, this episode was a massive value bomb. You didn't miss anything. It's all there.
Beautiful.
Well, folks, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review. If you know someone that needs to hear that your board members need a little bit more attention when they join, please share this with them because we need to spread the good news about board onboarding and training.
It's the most exciting news out there.
But the thing is, it makes such a big difference
It
in how
really does.
successful your organization is going to be and how frequently you'd call me with problems. So if you have a story, maybe you have a story about a board drama that you'd like to share so that other people can learn from your drama or your story, or maybe you have an excellent board training idea, send me a note online, charitytherapy.show. Thanks for listening.